Hello, second grade Smarties, and welcome to Wit and Wisdom Module 3 Civil Rights Heroes Lesson 18. Today, you guys are going to be completing your focus question task. So remember, our focus question, our pizza slice question has been, how did Ruby respond to injustice? How did Ruby Bridges respond to injustice? So before we dive into this writing, we need to go through the expectations and the goals that we have for this writing. So remember, we have been talking about how we are going to be writing this as a first person narrative. Okay, a first person narrative. So what kind of words are you going to need to use in your writing? You're going to need to use words like I am walking to the school. We are walking up the steps. My mother is coming with me. So you need to use those first person words. I, me, we, us. Okay, so with your first person narrative, remember you are writing as if you are Ruby Bridges. So the first thing you need to think of, how did Ruby respond to injustice? Okay. Part number 2, did you make sure to use all the parts of the scape? So did you use all those story elements in your writing? You need to tell me, what is the setting? Where is Ruby going to? On her first day of school, where is she going to? She's going to the France school. She is walking to the France school. So she's not in the school yet, but she is on the sidewalk and by the steps. Who are the characters in this story? So obviously we are writing like we are Ruby Bridges, but think about who is with her and who is around her. Her mother was with her, the marshals were with her, and the angry mob of people were there too. Think about what action Ruby is doing. She is walking to the school, but how did she walk? What kind of person was Ruby? Think about adjectives that you could use to describe Ruby. Think about adverbs that you could use to describe how Ruby does something. All right, we also need to make sure that we talk about the problem. What is the problem in this event? What are people angry about? And what is the ending? What happens on that first day? What eventually happens to Ruby? She finally gets into the school, right? So we need to make sure that we talk about how Ruby responded to the injustice of people angry that a Black child was going to a white school. We need to use our story elements with retelling this event. It says that you need to use one temporal word to tell the reader when the event was happening. We also need to make sure that we use an adjective. So what is a word that we could describe Ruby? What is a word to describe the mob of people standing outside the school? We also need to make sure to use an adverb. How was Ruby walking? What were the mob of people doing? We also need to make sure that we use our best spelling. So what does that mean, Smarties? We start every sentence with a capital letter. If we are writing the name of a person, we need to make sure to capitalize the first letter of that name. It's a proper noun. We also need to use ending punctuation. Make sure to end those sentences with punctuation. And we need to write complete sentences. Complete sentences. So it needs to have a subject, who the sentence is about, and verbs. What is the person doing? All right, so you know the drill. I'm going to help you think about how you can organize this, but I'm not going to be completing it for you. So here is what you are going to need for your writing. You are going to need that scape chart that you made because we are writing about the first day of school for Ruby. Okay, so we are going to think about her first day of school. Now, if we are writing from Ruby's perspective on that day, What temporal word might we use? Think of it like you're writing a diary. This is from Ruby Bridges' perspective. As if she is writing about her day. What is the first word that we could start with? Today. So we could say today. There's our temporal word. And you don't have to do the same thing I'm doing, but I'm trying to help you think about how you can organize your writing. But it's up to you to complete these sentences and use those skills that we've learned about. Today, now, am I going to write Ruby? No, because I'm writing from Ruby's perspective. Today, I am blank. What is she doing on this day? I want you to complete the sentence. Today, I am blank. Who was with her? My mom, my mother, Marshall's, and I'm going to fix that. My mother, Marshall's, and I are what? What are they doing in this scene? We know that today she is going to that school. Use your escape chart to write what the name of that school is. Today I am going to the France school. My mother, Marshall's, and I are, what are they doing? They're not in the school yet. What are they doing? Now, this is where I want you to tell me the problem. And I want you to put an adjective right here. And blank mob is, what were they doing? What were they doing while Ruby, the Marshalls, and her mother were walking up to the school? What were they doing? Why were they doing that? What was the problem? They blank. Why were they doing that action? Why were they doing that? Think about your problem. So here we have our setting. We have our sentence with our setting. We have our characters. I'm thinking setting, characters. We have actions. What are they doing? They are walking to the school. We have more actions. We have a problem. Why are they yelling at Ruby? And now we need our ending sentence. Now remember, you're writing from Ruby's perspective. So even though those people are angry at her, even though they are yelling at her, telling her to go away, what does she still do? What does she still do? Now, as you complete this sentence, I want you to tell me how she got to the school. Did she get there? Was she frightened? Was she brave? Did she walk in bravely? Did she walk in frightened? How did she walk into that building? That is how I want you to end this sentence, Smarties. Remember, you are responding to how Ruby responded to injustice. You are writing this from first person, so you need to make sure, Smarties, you're using words like I, my, we. Remember, you do not have to use the same format I'm using, but if it helps you organize your thoughts, do that. Use tools to help you be the best writer you can be. Make sure that you tell me the setting, that you tell me the characters in this event. What actions is Ruby doing? What is the problem? And how how does this event end? You're telling me about Ruby's first day of school at the France elementary school. You are telling me how she responded to the injustice of people yelling at her to go away. You also need to make sure that you use an adjective in your writing, a word that describes a noun. And you also need to make sure that you are using an adverb, a word that describes how a verb is done. Think about how Ruby walked into the building. Make sure, Smarties, that you have 5 complete sentences. Start every sentence with a capital letter, end with punctuation. I like to think of it as make sure your writing has swag. So, starts with a capital letter. Written neatly. Is your writing your best second grade handwriting? Is there a space between your words? And did you give punctuation at the end of each sentence? Give your writing swag. Start with a capital letter. Is it written nicely? Is there a space between every word? And did you give your sentences punctuation at the end? All right, Smarties, that is going to be it for lesson 18. I want you to think, what is something you can do now after this chunk of lessons? After these lessons with exploring Ruby Bridges Goes to School, My True Story, what is something that you can do better? What is something that you can do with your writing? What are some things that you can add to your writing to make it more interesting for your reader? All right, Smarties, that is it. Remember, keep your growth mindset as you are completing this writing. This is challenging. You guys have more things you have to add to your writing. Why are we doing this? Because good writers use interesting details. Good writers use details. We are adding details to make our reader to to get them sucked into the reading, right? To get them sucked into our writing. So keep that growth mindset. I know this is challenging, but you can do hard things. All right, Smarties, I will see you soon with another Wit and Wisdom lesson. Happy writing.